Most people believe that to live off the land, you need acres and acres of farmland, wide open spaces, expensive equipment, endless resources. But quietly, away from the noise of modern life, Amish farmers are proving something very different. With just 1 acre of land in the right system, they are producing meat, milk, eggs, fertilizer, and something most people are desperately chasing today: food independence. No supermarkets, no supply chains, no dependency, just a small piece of land, working perfectly. And here is the part most people don't understand. It's not the size of the land that makes it work. It's the animals on it. Because when the right animals are chosen and placed into a system where nothing is wasted, that 1 acre stops being small. It becomes powerful. Today, we are breaking down exactly how Amish farmers use 11 specific animals to turn a simple 1 acre homestead into a fully self-sustaining farm. Some of these animals require almost no maintenance. Some multiply your production without increasing your cost. And one of them quietly hold the entire system together. But before we get into the animals, you need to understand the foundation that makes all of this possible. Because without the system, the animals alone won't work. Imagine standing on a single acre of land, not empty but carefully organized. Every section has a purpose. Every movement is intentional. Every output becomes an input somewhere else. This is not random farming. This is engineered simplicity. Amish farming is built on a principle that modern agriculture often forgets. Nothing should go to waste. On a 1 acre homestead, space is limited. So efficiency becomes everything. There is no room for animals that only serve one purpose. No space for systems that create waste. No tolerance for imbalance. Instead, everything is connected. The animals feed the soil. The soil feeds the crops. The crops feed the animals. And the cycle continues over and over again. This is what makes it sustainable farming in its purest form. This is what makes it a productive small farm. And this is why even seniors, families, and beginners can run systems like this successfully. Because when it's built right, the farm doesn't drain you, it supports you. But here is where it gets interesting. Not all animals can function in this kind of system. Some consume too much. Some produce too little. Some simply don't fit into a closed-loop environment. So Amish farmers focus on a very specific group of livestock. Animals that are efficient. Animals that are multi-purpose. Animals that contribute more than they take. And it all starts with one of the most common animals in the world. An animal so simple that most people underestimate its importance. Remove this animal from the system, and everything begins to fall apart. Chickens. At first glance, chickens seem basic. Small birds. Low maintenance. Nothing special. But on a 1 acre homestead, chickens are not just animals. They are the foundation. They are one of the most important pieces of the entire system. Because chickens don't just produce food, they produce consistency. A steady supply of eggs. A reliable source of protein. A daily output that keeps the household running. For beginners stepping into homesteading, chickens are often the first step. And for good reason. They require very little space. They are relatively inexpensive to raise. And they adapt easily to different environments. But what makes chickens powerful isn't just what they produce. It's what they do. As chickens move around the farm, they scratch the soil. They break it up naturally. They control pests. They eat insects that would otherwise destroy crops. And then they leave behind manure. Not waste, but fertilizer. Rich organic material that feeds the soil and strengthens plant growth. So while they are producing eggs for the family, they are also improving the land itself. This is where the system begins to reveal itself. Because now, chickens are not just livestock. They are part of a cycle. They eat from the land and give back to it at the same time. This is backyard livestock at its most efficient. And this is why Amish homesteading always includes them. But as powerful as chickens are, they cannot do everything alone. Eggs are not enough. To move closer to true self-sufficient living, the farm needs something more versatile. Something that can turn rough, unusable vegetation into high-quality food. Something that can thrive where other animals struggle. And this is where the next animal comes in: goats. If chickens are the foundation, Goats are the multipliers, because goats have a unique ability that makes them incredibly valuable on a small farm. They can eat what other animals won't. Weeds, shrubs, rough vegetation, things that would normally go to waste. Goats turn into milk, and that changes everything. Because now, the farm is not just producing eggs and meat, it's producing dairy, fresh milk, cheese, butter, high-value food from land that wasn't even usable before. This is what makes goats one of the most efficient small farm animals. They expand the farm's productivity without increasing its size. And just like chickens, goats don't stop at production. They also contribute to the system. Their manure enriches the soil. Their grazing helps manage overgrowth. They clean the land while feeding the family. This is a kind of efficiency that defines a one-acre homestead. Nothing wasted, everything working. But here is where most people get it wrong. They think goats replace other animals. They don't. They complement them. Because each animal in this system has a role, and each role fills a gap that another animal cannot. So now, the farm produces eggs and milk, but there's still something missing. Something essential for families aiming for true food independence. A higher level of output. A stronger foundation of nutrition. And that comes from an animal that many people believe requires too much space. But in reality, when managed correctly, can sustain an entire household. The dairy cow. This is where the system levels up. Because a single dairy cow can produce more food than almost any other animal on the farm. Gallons of milk every day. Milk that can be turned into butter, cheese, yogurt. Staples of a healthy food home system. For Amish families, this is not just an animal. It's a cornerstone, a daily provider, a source of stability. And yes, it requires more care than chickens or goats. More feed, more space. But the output is unmatched. And here's the key. On a one-acre farm, every decision must be intentional. So if a cow is included, it must justify its presence. And it does. Because what it produces in a single day can feed an entire family. But even with all of this, there is still a problem that every small farm faces. Pests, insects, snails, crop destroyers. And if left unchecked, they can wipe out everything. But Amish farmers don't rely on chemicals to solve this. They use something smarter, something natural, and something surprisingly effective. Ducks, quiet, unassuming, but incredibly powerful. Because ducks solve one of the biggest problems in farming without damaging the crops. They hunt pests, snails, slugs, insects. They move through fields, cleaning up threats that would otherwise destroy harvests. And unlike chickens, they don't scratch up the soil aggressively, so crops stay intact. At the same time, they produce eggs, often larger and richer than chicken eggs, adding another layer of food production to the system. So now, this one-acre farm is producing eggs, milk, pest control, fertilizer. And we are only getting started, because the next animal changes the speed of everything. It takes production and accelerates it fast. This is where everything begins to speed up. Up until now, the farm has been building slowly. Eggs, milk, pest control, fertility, a strong foundation. But now, we introduce an animal that changes the pace completely. An animal that can multiply faster than almost anything else on the farm, and at the same time requires very little space to do it. Rabbits. Small, quiet, almost invisible compared to the larger animals. But don't let that fool you, because on a one-acre homestead, rabbits are one of the fastest ways to produce consistent meat, and they do it with incredible efficiency. A single pair of rabbits can produce multiple litters every year, and each litter can contain several offspring. That means in a short period of time, a small starting point turns into a reliable, renewable food source. This is what makes rabbits so valuable, especially for beginners. They don't need large grazing areas. They don't require expensive feeding systems, and they can be managed even by seniors or those just starting out in homesteading. But just like every other animal in this system, their value goes beyond what they produce. Rabbit manure is one of the best natural fertilizers available, And unlike many other types of manure, it can be used directly without composting, which means the cycle becomes even faster. Feed the rabbits, collect the manure, feed the soil, grow the crops, and the system keeps moving. This is what one-acre farming is really about. Speed, efficiency, flow, and now, with rabbits added to the system, the farm is no longer just stable. It's expanding. But here's where things get even more interesting, because every farm produces waste, food scraps, leftover crops, things that most people would throw away. And if that waste isn't managed properly, it becomes a problem. But Amish farmers don't see waste as a problem. They see it as an opportunity, because there's an animal that can take all of that waste and turn it into something incredibly valuable. Pigs. This is where the system becomes smarter, because pigs are not just animals on the farm. They are recyclers. They consume what would otherwise be wasted. Kitchen scraps, crop leftovers, excess produce, things that have no use anywhere else. Pigs turn into high-quality meat, and they do it quickly. They grow fast. They convert feed efficiently, and they reduce waste at the same time. This is what makes them a key part of sustainable farming, because now the farm is not just producing, it's eliminating waste, closing the loop even tighter. And just like the other animals, pigs contribute back to the system. Their manure feeds the soil. Their presence reduces overall farm waste. Everything stays in motion. Nothing is lost. At this point, the one-acre homestead is already producing a powerful combination of resources: eggs, milk, meat, fertilizer, pest control, and the system is becoming more efficient with every addition. But now, we introduce something that doesn't just add to the system, it multiplies everything. Bees. This is where the farm transforms. Because bees don't just produce honey, they increase the productivity of everything around them. As they move from plant to plant, they pollinate crops. And that simple action leads to stronger yields, more fruits, better vegetables, higher output from the same piece of land. This is the hidden power of bees. They don't take up space the way other animals do, but their impact spreads across the entire farm. And on top of that, they produce honey, a natural sweetener, a valuable product, something that can be consumed or sold. So now, the farm is not just feeding itself. It has the potential to generate income. This is where a small farm starts to become a family farm, a system that doesn't just support life, but sustains it financially. And here's the key idea. Every new animal added to this system doesn't just bring its own value, it strengthens everything else. This is what makes a self-sustaining farm. But we're not done yet, because there are still animals that add diversity, animals that provide seasonal advantages, animals that most people overlook, but Amish farmers understand their value perfectly. Turkeys, often ignored, overshadowed by chickens and ducks. But on a one-acre homestead, turkeys serve a unique purpose. They provide a larger source of meat, especially valuable during certain seasons. And while they may not produce daily like chickens, their size and yield make them worth the space they occupy. They are part of long-term planning, part of intentional living. Not everything on the farm needs to produce every single day. Some animals are there for strategic value, and turkeys fit that role perfectly. They add diversity to the food supply. They provide a higher meat yield, and they contribute to the overall balance of the farm. But as the system grows, there's another need that begins to emerge. Materials, not just food, but resources, things that can be used beyond consumption. And this is where the next animal comes in. Sheep. This is where the farm expands beyond food, because sheep provide more than just meat. They produce wool, a renewable material, something that can be used for clothing, insulation, and various household needs. This is where self-sufficient living becomes deeper, because now the farm is not just feeding the family, it's providing materials for everyday life. And just like goats, sheep are efficient grazers. They convert grass into valuable output. They require management, but they give back in multiple ways. Food, material, fertilizer, another layer added to the system, another step toward true independence. At this point, This one-acre farm is producing more than most people ever imagined possible from such a small space. And yet, there are still two animals left, two final pieces, that quietly hold everything together. Because no matter how efficient a system is, it still needs support, it still needs structure, and it still needs protection. And that's exactly what these last animals provide. But before we get to them, take a moment to look at what has already been built. From a single acre of land, now comes eggs every day, milk from multiple sources, fast and slow-growing meat, natural fertilizer, pest control, pollination, material production, all connected, all working together. This is not just farming anymore. This is a system, a living, breathing ecosystem. And the most powerful part, it runs in cycles, meaning the more it operates, the stronger it becomes. But to truly make it complete, we need something that can power the work itself, and something that can protect everything we've built. And that's where we're heading next. Now we arrive at the final pieces of the system, the parts most people overlook, but the parts that quietly hold everything together. Because no matter how productive a farm is, if it cannot function efficiently, and if it cannot protect itself, then everything built so far is at risk. So Amish farmers rely on two final animals, not just for production, but for support and survival. Horses. This is the backbone of Amish farming. While modern farming depends heavily on machines, fuel, and electricity, Amish systems are built differently. They rely on power that is renewable, reliable, and deeply connected to land itself. And that power comes from horses. Horses are not just animals on the farm. They are the engine. They pull equipment. They plow fields. They transport goods. They make it possible to work the land without depending on external systems. This is what makes off-grid living truly possible. Because when your farm can function without fuel, without machines, without outside dependency, you are no longer vulnerable. You are independent. And on a one-acre homestead, that level of independence matters. Because everything must be controlled within that space. Everything must be manageable. And horses provide that control. But beyond the work they do, they also represent something deeper. A slower, more intentional way of living. A system built on rhythm, not rush. A farm that works with nature, not against it. This is what Amish farming truly represents. And this is why horses remain essential, even in a world filled with technology. But even with all this power, there is still one final risk. Predators. Threats from outside the system. Animals that don't respect the balance that has been built. And if left unprotected, everything can be lost overnight, which is why the final animal, maybe the most underrated of all, farm dogs, loyal, alert, constant. They don't produce milk. They don't lay eggs. They don't provide meat. But what they protect is everything. Farm dogs guard livestock. They detect danger early. They keep predators away. They maintain order. And in a system where every animal plays a role, protection becomes just as important as production. Because without security, there is no stability. And without stability, there is no sustainability. So while farm dogs may not seem like a productive asset, they are essential to the system's survival. They are the silent protectors of the one-acre farm. And now, for the first time, we can step back and see the full picture. What started as a simple piece of land has become something far more powerful. A complete system, a self-sustaining farm, a one-acre homestead that produces everything a family needs, and more. Because now, every part is connected. Every animal feeds into another part of the system. Nothing stands alone. Nothing is wasted. Everything has a purpose. The chickens scratch the soil, control pests, and provide eggs. The goats convert rough land into milk and meat. The cow produces large volumes of dairy, feeding the household daily. The ducks protect crops while adding even more food. The rabbits multiply quickly, providing fast, efficient protein. The pigs recycle waste, turning scraps into value. The bees increase crop yields while producing honey. The turkeys provide seasonal meat, adding depth to the system. The sheep produce both food and material, expanding self-sufficiency. The horses power the farm, keeping it independent. And the dog protects it all, ensuring it continues. This is not just livestock. This is not just farming. This is design. Intentional living at its highest level. A system where every input creates an output, and every output feeds something else. This is what true sustainable farming looks like. This is what food independence really means. Not relying on stores. Not relying on systems you can't control. But building something that supports you every single day. And here's the truth most people never realize. You don't need massive land to do this. You don't need millions of dollars. You don't need complex technology. What you need is the right system, the right mindset, and the right animals. Because when everything is chosen intentionally, even 1 acre becomes more than enough. This is why Amish homesteading continues to thrive. This is why small farms continue to outperform expectations. And this is why more people today are turning back to this way of living. Not because it's easy, but because it works. Because it brings control back into your hands. Because it turns land into life. So the next time someone tells you that farming requires massive space, or that self-sufficient living is impossible, remember this. Somewhere, quietly, a 1-acre farm is producing everything a family needs, using nothing but the right system, and 11 powerful animals. And if you want to learn how to build systems like this, if you want to understand livestock, farming, and self-sustaining living in a way that actually works, then this is exactly what this channel is for. Welcome to Herd and Harvest, where we break down real farming systems, real strategies, and real ways to turn small land into powerful results. So, if you're serious about building your own farm, or even just understanding how these systems work, make sure you subscribe, because the next video might just be the one that changes how you see land forever.